Welcome to Season 5 of Outstanding Women Leaders, Witty and Wise Conversations. I'm your host, Katie L. Eads, founder and chief owl at Outstanding Women Leaders Professional Coaching and Podcast, an organization dedicated to empowering women in leaderships, relationships, and life. Owl is on a mission to host 100 million witty and wise conversations that inspire you, disrupt the way you think, and stir your soul into aligned action. That inspiration begins with a set of rules to guide our conversation today. Nobody gets to be wrong. Nobody gets to be right. Everybody gets to be vulnerable. And number 4, my favorite, everything is included. We do not edit here on this podcast. This conversation is exactly what it needs to be in this moment in time. We've asked our guests to join us via video to allow us to create authentic connection. Eyes are the window to the soul. You will be seen here. You'll be heard. There is space for you. When this conversation comes to a close, I will ask our guests 3 questions. If you've tuned in before, you know what they are. If you haven't, you don't want to miss them. But enough about me. Today, I'm excited to welcome Outstanding Women Leader, Gina Economopoulos. How did I do on that?
You did great.
Thank you. Gina was born in New York to a strong Italian and Greek-loving family. She graduated from Eastern CT State University and bartended before embarking on a 12-year convent journey at the Nunnery after her mother's passing. Settled on the Jersey Shore, Gina now works as an end-of-life doula, extending her compassionate heart to those in their final chapter. She found solace in sobriety as a proud Alcoholics Anonymous member, and her story of resilience through tragedy and faith inspires others to face life's challenges. Gina is also a first-time author of Shake the Dust Off Your Feet and Walk. Welcome, Gina. Excited to have you
Thank you,
here.
Katie. Oh,
You are officially my very first ex-nun to be on the podcast, but not the only ex-nun that I know. We have a family friend that, and she went on to open up a dog rescue, or not rescue, rather, dog bed and like a bed and breakfast for dogs, like they can stay overnight. That became her dream in real estate after she left the nunnery. Tell
oh
us,
wow.
you meant after your mother's passing, what brought you to the nunnery, and what also caused you to leave?
Oh, that's a real good question. Yes, it's good to be here, Katie. I thank you and blessings to all your listeners. And to be honest, when I was a kid growing up, large family, I being a nun was the furthest from my mind. Uh, I wanted that my dream at the time when I was 13, 14 was to get married when I was 18 and have about 8 kids by the time I turned 25 because I grew up in a loving family, like I shared, and it was something like, oh, I want to be like my parents. I was the seventh child, and it was like, this is wonderful. Find a man, go to college, find a man, get the white picket fence and everything, and live happily ever after. Well, as that did not happen, and it was like as I said, childhood was great. Went to college was great. I lived a fun-filled life, but at the same time, I didn't have anything inside me to live it. I grew up. I had low self-esteem. I was a people pleaser, and I wanted to be the center of attention. So here, like I said, I go to college thinking I will grow up, thinking I would find a man, but I did not. And when I graduated from college, my parents had moved from New York because they were in the retirement age. My mother had my brother when she was 49 years old back in the 70s. So by the time I graduated from college, my parents were at that age to retire because they still had a child in 8th grade. So they moved to Pennsylvania. So I moved in with them reluctantly because I wanted to live that college life. Still wanted to find that man, and but yet the best option at the time was to move to Pennsylvania, and my mother was so she was a little Italian lady, and she's like Gina, we have a room here for you. You're welcome to come and but I went, and so I had to get a job. Of course, I had a degree in social work, so with that degree, I became a bartender. So that was it, bartending. This is my life. Bartended one year. Yes, great. Lived with my parents. Yes, great. living in that college scene, so to speak, or working. That's great. But then my mother, she died. She was diagnosed with cancer in 1991, and then they gave her 4 to 6 months to live. She had bone cancer, terminally ill, and my dad and I were home to take care of her. But prior to that, Katie, I had stacks of applications to go to be on the cruise line, like the Love Boat, Julie
Mm.
McCoy. That's what I wanted to do. So up until then, everything I wanted to do in my life, every dream I wanted to do, it never happened in my eyes. It never happened because here my mother was diagnosed with cancer. My younger brother that I spoke about earlier, he went off to college, first year of college. And so, what am I going to do? Say, Dad, goodbye, Mom, goodbye. I'm going to go off and be a cruise director. Um, so I stayed home. And it wasn't like it wasn't any it was just the love I had for my parents and for my mom. But yet, during that time of my mom's illness, I thought she was gonna survive. I thought she was gonna beat it. I mean, granted, she had bone cancer, but I'm 23 years old. I need my mom. I need my mom. We were raised Catholic. But yet I had left, I left the Catholic Church it's not that I left God, I didn't need God at the time. But yet when mom was diagnosed, we brought out the rosary beads because my parents were very devout Catholic and prayers. And I'm like, okay, mom, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. And that was like my first reaction to life of what life can bring. Um, because, she did die. She died in my arms. And I was like, this can't be. God, how could you do this? I prayed 10 Hail Marys, or I prayed this and I prayed that. Why? That was the first time real death had hit me so close. And watching it, because I thought I was in control, giving my mom this and doing this. But she slowly, with bone cancer, just went through her body and just took her. She succumbed to it. But she had a beautiful death with six siblings around. My siblings did come and help, but yet it was just my dad and I. So when she died, that was the beginning of my spiritual journey, one would say, which I did not realize it. I was like so angry with God. I was in tears. I was crying. I stopped bartending. I couldn't bartend because I lost my mother. And it's like, what's going on with my life? And of course, now being a cruise director was like, forget about it, because I just had I was like a lost soul, but I was hanging on to my dad at the time because my dad took it very hard. They had 40 years of marriage, and watching, he watched his loved one die like that. So I was hanging on to my dad because I was afraid that he was going to die. Like, and at this point, I didn't have no concept of faith. I had no concept of hope. I really had no concept of God in my life, a relationship. So when my mom died, we're at the wake and the funeral, and people kept coming up to me who were all devout Catholics or Christians. They said, "Your mother's with God, your mother's with God." And I'm like, I don't give a hoot where my mother is. She's not with me. And so I went into the church, my mom's church where we buried her out in New York, and I remembered going to God saying, God, my everyone says my mother's with you here, but I don't want to talk to you. You get out, and I want to talk to my mom. So that's how I began my relationship, by talking to my mom, writing to her every day, and just saying why, what's going on in life? What is the meaning of life? What is the purpose of life? And then of course my Italian relatives, they were devout. They had a faith. They had all these youth groups and everything. So I would just be dragged along in tears. And if I had met you back then, Katie, I would have just told you everything. That's how I was. Whoever it was, my mom, this died. What about, like this? I'm 24 years old, and it was rough because I really, did not know what was going to happen. But then as I was searching and trying to find some comfort, I did find comfort back in the Catholic Church. I did come back to the roots of my faith. I felt like like the St. Paul conversion. It's, those Christians would understand, like he falls off the horse and he comes back, he says, "Oh, I know who God is. I know who Jesus is." And in a way, that's how I was. Like, "Oh, I know the resurrection," just from searching. And then in that, now I'm in my late 20s. I slowly got rid of bartending because I'm this crusader now for the Lord, for God, for Jesus, for the church. And then I had met some Franciscan religious community through my cousin, and I was like, wow, look at these young people loving God and having fun. So I'm like, okay, I'll join them. And and I did. And I did, I'm like, yes, this is it. This is my life. Okay, now I give up marriage, I give up kids, I give up that white picket fence, I take the vow of poverty, chastity, and obedience for the rest of my life. And I was a nun for 12 years in the South Bronx. We worked, lived with the poor. That was my first encounter of being with the, not first encounter, but being with the death and the dying. I was always at someone's deathbed, but then yet, as you could see, I'm not a nun anymore. I left. I did make final vows, but I also endured a lot of pain and suffering. It wasn't like, okay, this is not for me. Goodbye. It was going through a lot of pain. I mean, it was. I felt rejected. I felt betrayal. There was a lot of fear. Um, I felt like, yeah, I was, our personalities clashed because there was a fairly new order of sisters. Granted, there were friars, a men's order with it side by side, but yet I felt like they didn't like me. They didn't like my personality because one thing I could say, Katie, God had just given me a personality plus. Wherever I go, everybody loves Gina. Wherever uh, I was a sister. Everybody loved Sister Regina, and I just felt like it was also a curse because I just felt like I was always being hurt. I was always being hurt. So in those 12 years of being a sister, there was a lot of blessings, traveled around a lot on pilgrimages, met a lot of young people. Like I said, people loved me. I was a famous sister. I was on, TV shows, Catholic shows, all that. But yet ultimately at the end, I endured such great suffering the last 3 years of my religious life that they came to a point where they asked me to leave. They like, you don't belong here anymore. Mind you, when I had joined, they say you belong here. You belong here. And anyone, if you're familiar with the convent or religious life, you have a superior that you follow, like obedience, and whatever they say, you believe it's from God. Whatever they say. Meanwhile, your heart may not. But mind you, too, Katie, I was very broken, not even realizing in the sisterhood. When I was a sister, I was still didn't like myself, even though I know God loved me. I was still, I guess, in hindsight, I look back. I was still searching. I was still searching for some sort of peace or happiness or for the love inside and me. And I thought, oh, I'll get it as a convent in the sisterhood. But ultimately, I didn't find any love there. I felt more rejected. And I kept hanging on because I was in final vows back in 2003. I made final vows. And so, as one knows, when you make final vows or marriage to someone, you'll do anything to stay, to work it out. So I did. Yeah, I did. I did. They sent me away. I did this. I went for counseling. I went this. And ultimately, one would say I pour out my blood, sweat, and tears working on myself to fit in and to be part of. And then in the long run, yeah, they said to me, I don't belong there anymore. So yeah, I felt like, okay, I did all I could. I was against the wall, hands up, surrender. Yeah, and then I had to move on, which it was painful. When I left the convent, I had a broken heart. It was very broken in life, and I was maybe in my 40s at the time, early 40s. So
And were you angry? I imagine there's a grief cycle that's taking place in this. And as you tell this story, I've been kicked out of a few religious organizations in my day as well. If you look at my resume, you can figure out which one of them they were. Um, and it's like the one place you went to go and the ultimate betrayal, right? I remember sitting in church and they kept talking about how Jesus just loved me the way I was, and I was like, I don't have to change anything. Jesus likes me just like this, like this. Oh,
Yeah.
this is great. And then it was like, after a time, it was like, well, Jesus would like you to do this instead. And Jesus actually would really probably like you a lot better if you did X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
So yeah, tell us a little bit about what does that process feel like to grieve being rejected by God?
Exactly, Katie. It's of course, when I first left, I was, but no denial. I was angry. I was, angry with the community. I was angry with God. I was angry because, and this is all in my book, I endured a lot and it was hidden. And I was angry at people that did not stand up for me, that did not step in and say, hey, look what you're doing. And I mean, and of course, I looking back in hindsight, it takes two to tango. But at that moment, afterwards, so I was so broken that I was angry with God, but I still went to church. I still kind of had my faith in some form or fashion because I was still going to church. Now, the ironic, funny thing is, when the day I left, uh this they didn't know how to do this. They didn't, because I was the first sister in final vows leaving, but I was a famous love sister to the community. And of course, they wanted to look good. They wanted to make it sound like it was my decision, but it wasn't. It was, and they wouldn't admit that. So here, they never admitted it. They wanted me to write a letter and give it to everyone saying it was my decision. And through my spiritual director, he's like, don't write that letter. Like I needed someone on the outside to look in because at this point, I was depleted. Like even my cousin, when I made final vows, my cousin beforehand said, do you know what you're doing? Like they saw a lot with this community being dysfunctional, but I didn't. No, no, me, I'm at peace. I'm at peace. God wants me here. God wants me here. And so I could not think for myself. I could not see for myself. So somebody on the outside had to see for me. And when it came to that decision, when I had to go in, meanwhile, I'm wearing this habit for 12 years. So of course they said to me, the community says, when you leave, you could keep your habit on and take your time because the habit was a symbolic. Here I'm giving my life to Christ. I'm giving my life to God. How can I rip it off? Yeah, but yet my spiritual director, who's very wise, had said to me, "Take it off when you say goodbye. Gather your stuff." And he said to me, he wanted me to meditate. I had a few days before this hurrah of leaving the convent. He said, I want you to meditate on the scripture, shake the dust off your feet and walk. Because that's how I felt, because that scripture, Jesus tells his disciples, if you get, when you go into a town and if they reject you, whatever, like this, shake the dust and walk. So I did. But it was the hardest thing for me to do. So here I give him I give my habit. I put on this prairie. I feel like I'm still a sister because I didn't know who I was. Um, and when I left there, like I had a bandana on my head because I was bald, like I had like this, shirt looking like a nun. I was looking like a nun. And so the next day, so I went to go live with a friend of mine who lives in Jersey, who runs a home for disability. And she says, why don't you come here? So because I didn't know where to go, I go there. But the next day I go to church because I'm here. Okay, I'm going to still go to church and maybe I'm still a nun. Maybe I'm not a nun yet. And I had left, and the order I left, is a very famous order. I mean, everyone loves this order. So I'm like, oh my God, rejected from this. So here I go to mass and this after mass, I'm praying the rosary and staying and praying, and this lady comes up to me, "Oh, sister, what is your name?" And I'm like, "Oh, me?" Because I'm like, I this prairie look, and I said, "Oh, to be honest, I don't know my name. I left the convent yesterday." And she was like taken back, and I was taken back, of coming that out. So I really had to learn. I had a lot to be healed inside of. I was one confused pup. And as I said, I went to go live with these men and women with disabilities where they were able to love me unconditionally. It was like a transition time. This is in the late 2000s. I couldn't tell you who was famous or not famous because we didn't have any electronics or TV or anything like that. I wouldn't know how to wash. I didn't know nothing about nothing. So here it was like, okay, I'm with these men and women, like a house mother, lived with them for about 2 years so I could, get my ground again, just to be healed. But yes, I was very angry. I was very, because I did feel rejected. And then, but during that 2 years, I looked at it now. People who knew me that knew I left, is like, oh my God, you have to go to another order because you're a great nun. Because I was a great nun. I love, like that. I said, why would I want to go to another order and get hurt again by women? I mean, and honestly, I wasn't a big fan of women too when I left. I was like, how could I do this to myself? Why would I want to do this to myself? So I took those 2 years with the people with the men with disabilities and the women, and I was able to kind of get grounded. And then I kind of realized, okay, I did one vocation in my life was to be a religious life. Not that I was totally healed and reconciled, but now I could do something, like maybe to get married or live in the world, learn how to live in the world. So it was a real tough transition, but at the same time, thank God for that place that I was able to go to, just to get that unconditional love, because I did not feel loved by the sisters at all. And to be honest, I really didn't feel loved by God, because it's true. God, you called me and now you rejected me. How could this? But at that time, I was still, okay, God, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? So that's yes, I was angry. To answer your question, yes, I was angry.
Yeah, it's hard work being a heretic. Jesus was my favorite heretic. And when I got divorced and sold my business and had to and got rejected by the people in the church as well. When I landed, I went to New York, but I couldn't afford the toll, so I was in Hoboken, is the joke that I make there. But when I went there and I went to a church, people are like, how are you not mad at a church? And for me, I wasn't. I really loved those people. And I wasn't like, well, those are people and people. And then I realized, not every person is nice. um, I
Yeah,
had to get hurt a few times. Is it Peter or Paul who needed 3 times? I need 3 times to be hurt. So
true.
congratulations. You got it done in one.
Yes, that was my first. Yes, yes, it was. I got it done, and yeah. And
Yeah.
then also, I just want to add, because sometimes we do go through this, is that at that time I was waiting for the community to apologize to me, to see what they'd done wrong.
Mm.
Never did, and I still never did. So
Yeah.
to in so many ways of what I want, and then I had to learn. Okay, that's okay.
Yeah, you
That's
got to be
okay.
Judas and Jesus all at the same time. And
Yeah,
I like
you okay.
this example of humility. Is for all we know, Judas is the most humble among us, because perhaps Judas had, without Judas, you don't get Jesus. Somebody had to
Yeah,
rat him out.
exactly. Someone had to be yeah.
Somebody had to be that person, right? And so true humility is just being okay with the stories that they write about you when you leave.
And I say yes today. I am, but I had to go through a lot more suffering. That was kind of nothing. I mean, I don't want to say that was nothing, but that was a big trauma in my life,
Yeah.
and yet thinking that, okay, I'm done, but God kept putting me on a path of more suffering. And but
That was
I'm
your three
great.
lessons to learn.
Yes, yes. I mean, that was another lesson. I mean, first it was my mom's death, then it was the sisters, and now here once I left the men with the disabilities, that's why I came to the Jersey Shore. You're probably familiar with the Jersey Shore, being from Hoboken or living in Hoboken. So heaven and earth meets at the beach for me. Heaven and earth meets. That's what I've come to learn. So I'm like, I want to do what Gina wants to do. I'm tired of
Mm.
serving. By this time, I was serving 20 years. Not that I do have a heart of service, not that I wasn't compassionate, but I was done of helping other people that I wanted to do what Gina wanted to do. And she loved the beach. She grew up on Long Island, loved the beach. Come to the beach, learn how to rent an apartment, and it had furniture, Katie. I didn't have to go out and buy furniture because I wouldn't know what to do, you know? I mean, it was just, so I was, because I always have a simple heart too, simple living. I don't, nothing grandiose. I had a bed. Thank God I don't have to live, sleep on bed boards, which if I did, I did. That's what I did for 12 years. So here I come to the beach. Okay, new life for me. This is going to be a new living. And so I had to get a job. And my dad, being alive at the time, was so gracious, always supported me, whatever I did. And he always says, you'll make a lemon out of lemonade, or, that whole saying, don't worry, everything will work out, and always my encourager. And so I had to get a job, and I've done of serving people. So what did I do? I go back to bartending because that's the only thing I knew how to do was bartending. So I was a bartender, and a nun, and a bartender. That's my claim to fame, I mean, and so I'm like, okay, I'll bartend, get back. I got back in that environment, that I like, the comfort, the drinking and all that. And a gentleman walks in, maybe a few weeks after I was bartending. His name is Danny, and I was like, oh my God, now I'm learning how to date. I said, okay, this is it. I mean, a matter of weeks, I met this guy. The guy, he comes in for a beer and talking to him and whatever. Love it. Da da da. We go dating, and of course I did not tell him I was a nun. I learned my lesson because the first year after, when I was living with the people with men with disabilities, now and then I would go to the bar, meet a guy, whatever, or on the train. They would ask me what I did, and I would tell them I was a nun. I told my whole story, being isolated, betrayed, whatever, like this, and probably anger came out of back then, and for some reason, they never called me for a date. I'm like, why did they call me for a date? So when I met Danny, I was advised by a good friend of mine, Terry, said, don't tell any guy that you were a nun. And I was like, okay. So I didn't. So I kept telling Danny I was a social worker. And then he kind of knew something was up. And I did tell him I was a nun. I didn't scare him. And then right after that, like a few weeks after our dating and till until, when I revealed myself, he told me, well, not that he told me because one night he's a drinker. Well, I come to find out he was an alcoholic that cannot stop drinking. And I was like, okay, what's and I didn't run because it didn't scare me. If I didn't scare him of being a nun, he's not going to scare me for being an alcoholic. And to be honest with you, at the time, Katie, to me, an alcoholic was somebody with a brown paper bag under the
Mhm.
bridge. That was oh, Danny, you could stop, no problem. Like I had no concept of the disease of alcoholism. He did stop. He drank, stopped, went to rehab and everything. He went to, the rooms of AA. He told me to go to a 12-step called Al-Anon, went to that. Like, oh yeah, I got this down back. I know how to stop him, But I've come to learn that, I can't stop him. I have no control. Like I didn't have control over my mom nor the sisters. I didn't realize that, and but I learned it the hard way. But yet I stuck with him. We stuck together, and then he did find sobriety, which is such a gift out west in Arizona. And so he's like, okay, this is it. This is my white picket fence, Katie. I'm gonna do it. This is finally my dream come true. So back in 2012, he comes home, picks up all of his stuff, from the Jersey Shore, and him and his mom travels cross country. He's sober. He has a job. We're gonna go live in Timbuktu. Where I'd go wherever to support his sobriety because great guy. I mean, sober people are great. So are great when they're sober, and that's what Danny was sober. But once again, God intervened in a tragic way that as he was going cross country with his mom They got into a tragic car accident in Indiana, and the mother, the truck hit several trees. The mother died on impact. The truck burned up. Danny burned up. But he survived. I didn't think he was going to survive that night in July of 2012. So I was like, okay, okay, what are we going to do? Call AA. I go out to Indiana, uprooted. Now, mind you, this is all in my book. Okay, so more details of everything is in my book, and go out there, get involved with the groups of AA. They take us in, they help us. Okay, now Danny, God, you survived. God saved you from this fire. He's burnt half his body. And it comes to find out that he saw his mother die in this accident. So, what is an alcoholic when we do with pain and suffering? So a few months after that, he drank. He went back to drinking. And now we're in Indiana. I'm flipping out. I still had no concept because I'm in my own disease, not realizing it. And then I'm like, you got to stop manipulating and everything like that. And I was just like, what's going on in my life? Why can't I have a decent person, a decent, whatever? And what my dream was. And but then here, I mean, I love Danny. We got engaged out there. Said maybe this is going to help him, that he'll stop. But then a month before our wedding day, I found him dead. He died of the disease. So here, I lose two people within 6 months of each other in the cornfields of Indiana, which I had, I had friends, I did have friends from AA that were there that I met. Nobody, I was dead. Talking about now, talking about God and anger, Katie. I didn't even want to talk to God anymore. I didn't even want to try anymore because throughout my life, I kept searching and trying and everything. I was like, I'm done. I am totally done. How could you do this? How could you do this to me? So here, I'm in such pain. My heart was broken with the sisters. Now my heart is shattered with Danny. And and I always say, and I still do, when you have a shattered heart, it's like glass. I compared myself to glass. When you glass drops and it shatters, you can't put it back together again. You just throw it away. That's exactly how I felt. Throw me away. If it's a broken glass, you could put it together. My heart was broken. I could put it together. No, not anymore. Not anymore. I've done enough suffering in my life up to this point that I'm done. I have enough pain, enough anger, enough fear, everything. So so after that, after Danny's death, I went up to upstate to the Finger Lakes, Cuca Lake up north. My sister lives there, and that summer after, I went to my niece's wedding and talking about one sad pup. I was the saddest pup. I couldn't even smile in those wedding eyes. Like I'm not celebrating, but I was there present. And but then yet I that's where I did a lot of my writing. I was writing with my pain of Danny and the death and everything. And then all of a sudden, all the writing of the pain of the sister and my whole life and everything. I wrote about 180 pages handwritten, put that aside, and then I was just like somebody had to carry me. And I mean, I was just going from one hand to another without even realizing it. I was in tears. I came back to the Jersey Shore. Coming back, I was like, I was thinking maybe I could find maybe Danny's back here and his mom. Not, you know what I mean? Now talking about grief, here I've been grieving. Now grieving this grief was like, and ultimately also grieving that he died of the disease of alcoholism. It's a stigma to the world. I was ashamed, and but then yet, when I came back here, back after he died in 2013, I came back here, got an apartment, got whatever, and I just was just simply existing to life, and it was to a point where I resigned. This is my life. I no woman. No, this is my life. I'm done. And then yeah, then I look in hindsight. Now I do. I see how God was carrying me without me realizing it. His grace was there without me realizing because I went into an AA meeting because I wanted to. Now I was like on this mind of like, why are these people sober and Danny couldn't make it? Like I just like I was like another journey, maybe to keep me occupied, even to keep me alive, because to be honest, I wanted to die. I was like every morning when I woke up, I'm like, crap, I'm up again. I really wanted to die. I wouldn't take my life, but I wanted, yeah, I was just like, and so as I went into these rooms, the first room the first meeting I went to, there happened to be a gentleman there that knew Danny. I was like, oh my God, and I'm crying. All I did was cry, 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 cry. Tears, if you want to talk, I mean, it's either you're going to come to me or stay away from me because I'm in tears. Yeah, either way. And so the gentleman had invited me to come to more meetings, and I'm like, but I'm not an alcoholic. You guys are. Danny is. I don't need to be here. And they're like, no, just come and listen. Just come and listen. So I did. I went to go to these closed discussion meetings. I identify myself not as an alcoholic, just the desire not to pick up, just to be present. And all of a sudden being angry, my anger was fuming at this time. Um, those meetings, I always said that if my eyes could kill, everyone would be dead by now. That's where my anger was at. I didn't talk. I was just crying. I was holding up the wall, one would say. And I was going like every day just to listen and to hear. And you hear about God, you hear about gratitude, you hear about all the sobriety. And then I was getting really angry because some people in the rooms, they might have had like 20 years of sobriety, which I wanted that for Danny, and they were still jerks. I was like, I don't understand. I don't understand why you're still so, and I don't understand why don't, like here, because I knew now at the time what disease could do. It could kill you. It's life or death. It's like, don't take your sobriety for granted nor for life, because I've been there. I was just one confused, angry pup. But then as I was going every day and listening and crying, and some people would come and console me. And at this point, they didn't know I was a nun. And so when God came up, I was so angry. Well, at the end of these meetings, they say the Our Father. I wouldn't say it at all. I was like, stay away from me. And so people would be kind and say, oh, don't worry, give God a chance. And I'm like, God loves you, they'll tell me. And I'm like thinking to myself, no crap. I use another word, but no crap, God loves me. I married him, with divorce. And I say he's on the couch now. I want to strangle him. And but anyhow, to make a real long story short, this is all in my book that on April 2nd, 2015, it took me a while that I realized I'm an alcoholic. Katie, that was the answer to all my problems in my life, that I've come to realize that yeah, I have a drinking problem without realizing it. I was putting it on Danny. I was putting it, and I look back in hindsight. Oh wow, the disease was there, cunning and baffling, insidious in the convent and everything. So that moment when I said I realized I was an alcoholic, that's where another spiritual change happened in my life without me realizing it. Everything I was holding on to, all that pain, anger, sisters throughout my life, the low self-esteem, hatred, everything just opened up. And if you ever experience when a wound opens up, it's more pain. You don't want it. So that's how I looked at my whole body, my mind, heart, and soul. There was more pain. And I was like, now what do I do with it? Do I go run to a drink? Do I go run on my self-pity couch? Do I stay in my, I mean, so I joined, and I started working the steps, working a program, powerless, learn about it and realize, wow, and eyes just opened up. And so I had to, it was one day at a time, 1 minute, one breath at times. And this is where I am today, from going from my journey and now being in the rooms of AA. God willing, in April I'll have 10 years, but all I have is today. I'm in the light. I'm in brightness. I'm with God. Um, and I've just been healing, but I know healing is a constant. It's a constant journey. I'm much better off today than I was yesterday or 2 days ago, even last, I mean, much better 10 years ago. I want to live today, Katie, and I'm able to participate in life instead of running away from life. And I'm able to live life on life's terms without my best ability because I'm still, I still have fear and anger sometimes when challenges happen, but I have the tools and I know I'll get through it because I've been through so much that I'm like, aha, okay, God, you're with me. You'll help me get through this. As long as I don't pick up a drink, as long as I, work in a program, I go to my meetings, I lead meetings, I do a lot of service work. And then in that, I became an end of life doula. I know you wanted me to touch on that, but
Yeah.
that's so yeah, that's my story.
Mm. I'd love to know more about the end of life doula. How do you support people through that? What does that look like?
Uh when someone would reach out to me and would share that their loved one is dying or could you come over? So I assess I my service could be from A to Z. I've learned to place it in their hands and what they want from me. So it could be being present, holding their hands. It could be praying with them. It could be helping them arrange them for their wake, their funeral. It could help the person who's dying. What do you want to do now? What's your legacy? How do you want to leave? But it all depends, Katie. It all depends on that person, on an individual. It depends on what they want and what they don't want. Because to be honest, death and dying is like a fear in this country. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how I look at it, or that's how I see it. I mean, and that's natural. That's natural. And even with faith, it's natural to be afraid to such an extent. And but yet I try to bring as peace, presence, God to them and my best ability, whatever, because I do have a passion to be with the dying, but I love it. I love it. I don't tell them that, I mean, I would not tell them that, but I just to be present, say everything's going to be okay, everything's going to be fine. Um, and then also, whatever belief they are, whatever faith they are, to go to a better place. This is a time of transition from this place. Oh, what do you think you're going to? Oh, it's going to be Havana or whatever it may be, whatever brings you that peace. Because through my own personal story, my journey, and being with people who are dying, there was a time, being with my mom and like with Danny and everything. I didn't have any faith, hope, or love. I had no God, and I was in hell. That's now having faith, having a hope and having a God in my life and being sober. Wow, there is a heaven. There is something blissful. So I know those feelings and those thoughts, and I don't force any of my beliefs on anyone. I'm just there listening to my spirit of what they want. If it's just not saying a word, standing in a corner, I stand in the corner and pray because they don't realize that I always pray when I walk into the client's place, the patient's house. I put on my doula shoes. I put on that, I do the best I can with that compassionate heart and just say, okay. And then I'm also there for the family because grief is my best friend. I know I don't need to go through books about how to grieve. And it's okay to grieve and it's okay. And the best thing I could do is just listening. Listening is the best thing, not to say a word, because there's no words to say to someone who's dying or and who has lost someone. There's no words unless they invite, unless they bring something up, unless they question. Okay. And the simpler the words, the better. Don't make things too complicated, especially towards the end. So, I mean, that's from my experience.
Thank you
So
so much,
I,
Gina. I
yeah.
appreciate you spending your time with me today and sharing your amazing journey and story of faith and finding yourself. I always
Thank
ask
you
my
so much for
guests,
having me. Go
yes, I
ahead.
always
Those
ask my
three
guests three
questions. What are the,
questions. What's
okay.
your superpower?
My faith.
And what's your purpose?
What's my purpose? Spread the message of hope and strength to others.
And what's next for you?
Oh, to continue to be the person I am and growing in my faith, hope. Yeah, just to continue to be the person I am. That's what's next for me. To be a sober, faithful woman of God.
I always give our guests the last word or whatever message you'd like to leave our audience with.
Yes, I like to, from my personal experience, do not lose hope. You're not alone. Know that you are loved. And if nobody told you they loved you today, I do.